Welcome back again, everyone. It's Dina Calmette here with CWW7 News. And for today's broadcast, I wanted to bring you up to date concerning some events that have occurred this week. And I'd like to start with Russia today. The Daily Mail is reporting, as well as many other sources, that the Russian president has warned that World War III could end civilization. And he also used his annual TV phone-in with the Russian public to slam the U.S. over missile strategy. President Putin has warned a third world war could end in civilization as he addressed the prospect of a major global conflict. The Russian president said the threat of mutual destruction had always prevented leading military powers from making hasty moves. But speaking on his annual TV phone-in with the Russian public, he then slammed the U.S., claiming its withdrawal from treaties on anti-ballistic missiles is an attempt to put an end to strategic parity. He also warned of a new space race and suggested Russia will soon develop new weapon systems. It goes on further to report that when President Putin was asked by a caller if non-stop sanctions could spark a global conflict, he replied by quoting Albert Einstein, stating, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." He added the understanding that a third world war could be the end of civilization, and it should restrain us from taking extreme steps on the international arena that are highly dangerous for modern civilization. The threat of mutual destruction has always restrained participants of the international arena, he said, prevented leading military powers from making hasty moves, and compelled participants to respect each other. U.S. withdrawal from treaties on anti-ballistic missiles is an attempt to put an end to strategic parity, but we will respond to this. We believe that unilateral introduction of all kinds of sanctions does not resolve problems, it only worsens them. On weaponry, he confirmed his plans for a global-range missile in an unmanned underwater vessel, but added this is not all we plan to produce and put into service. It's too early to talk about it, but we will do so soon. Meanwhile, the Business Insider is reporting that the U.S. is pushing NATO to get more troops and weapons in order to deter Russia. The United States is pressuring European allies to ready more NATO battalions, ships, and planes for combat, stated officials, in a fresh move to show up NATO's deterrence against a potential Russian attack. U.S. Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis will seek broad agreement for the plan in Brussels on Thursday when alliance defense ministers meet, laying the ground for endorsement by NATO leaders at a summit in July. The plan would require NATO to have 30 land battalions, 30 air fighter squadrons, and 30 Navy ships such as destroyers ready to deploy within 30 days of being put on alert, although the proposal does not discuss specific troop numbers or a deadline for setting up the strategy. The size of battalions vary across NATO, from 600 to 1,000 soldiers. A diplomat stated that we have an adversary, Russia, that can move quickly into the Baltics and Poland in a ground attack. We don't have the luxury of taking months to mobilize. One U.S. official said the initiative was primarily aimed at countering Russia and fitted with the Pentagon's 2018 National Defense Strategy, which accuses Moscow of seeking to shatter the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Russia's war games last year, involving what Western officials said were 100,000 troops, also prompted concerns about accidental conflicts that could be triggered by such exercises, or any excursions into Russian-speaking regions in the Baltics. However, the Kremlin firmly rejects any such aims and says it is NATO which is the security threat in Eastern Europe. This particular situation reminds me of somebody taking a stick and poking it into a bear's face, teasing it until eventually that bear attacks. Now, everybody has a right to defend their nation. However, some of these troops are camped out right on Russia's border, and eventually that bear is going to react. And we know that he will already do so concerning Israel in Ezekiel 38. And speaking of Israel, I actually have a report here from the Times of Israel, and they are reporting that Netanyahu has warned Assad that he is no longer immune if he continues to harbor Iranian forces. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday warned the Syrian president that he was no longer immune from retaliation while declaring the Iran nuclear deal is over after Washington ditched the accord, noting that Israel had stayed out of Syria's protracted civil war in which Iran backs Assad. Netanyahu said increasing Iranian encroachment required a new calculus. He said he is no longer immune. His regime is no longer immune. If he fires at us, as we've just demonstrated, we will destroy his forces. He also stated that Syria has to understand that Israel will not tolerate the Iranian military entrenchment in Syria against Israel. The consequences are not merely to the Iranian forces there, but to the Assad regime as well. I think it's something that he should consider very seriously. Meanwhile, Arutz Sheva is reporting that Mike Pompeo sent a stern warning to Iran. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declared on Wednesday that Washington would not allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. His comments came after Iran's nuclear chief stated that within a month, the construction of a facility in its Natanz nuclear plant to build advanced centrifuges. Mike Pompeo stated on Twitter, "We're watching reports that Iran plans to increase its enrichment capacity. We won't allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. Iran is aware of our resolve. It's another example of Iran's foolishly squandering its resources. It should surprise no one if protests in Iran continue." Iran's decision to accelerate its uranium enrichment follows U.S. President Donald Trump's withdrawal last month from the 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and world powers. The IAEA, which is in charge of making sure Iran is complying with the 2015 deal, has released several reports which showed that Iran was continuing to abide by the deal's key measures. Nevertheless, on Monday, the IAEA chief called on Iran to ensure timely and proactive cooperation with inspections mandated under the 2015 deal. We shall definitely wait to see what happens with Iran moving forward. But as far as Israel goes, threatening Assad, that cannot go over too well with Russia, especially since Russia is Syria's biggest ally. But at the same time, it leads us to Bible prophecy, Isaiah 17:1, concerning the destruction of Damascus, as well as Ezekiel 38:39, the Gog and Magog war. Now, right now, these are only words, but eventually prophecy will be fulfilled. And I will definitely continue to keep you updated as these reports continue to be developed, but I would like to move on and talk about the United States and China. Just in the past couple of weeks, tensions have soared. Just last week, the United States sent 2 destroyers in the South China Sea. Well, earlier this week, the United States sent 2 nuclear U.S. bombers. A pair of U.S. B-52 bombers conducted another show of force near contested airspace by man-made islands in the South China Sea. The flight took place early Tuesday and involved 2 bombers flying from the U.S. base at Diego Garcia. The overflight was the latest by U.S. strategic bombers to assert that the waterways and airspace around and above a series of Chinese-made islands in the South China Sea remain open. However, the flight comes only a week after the United States sent 2 guided missile destroyers within 12 nautical miles of the contested South China Sea parcel islands. And it also comes directly after Defense Secretary Jim Mattis used a major security conference in Singapore to call out China for instigating intimidation and coercion. Tuesday's flight, which Pacific Air Forces said was a training mission, is part of the continuous bomber presence missions intended to maintain the readiness of U.S. forces. Meanwhile, the South China Morning Post is reporting that China has removed its missile systems from the disputed South China Sea island, but sends a warning to the United States. Beijing seems to have removed missile systems from a disputed island in the South China Sea, although U.S. defense officials and experts said the disappearance was likely to be only a temporary arrangement amid rising tensions between the 2 countries. The development came after Beijing criticized the United States for sending 2 nuclear-capable B-52 bombers to fly over the disputed Spratly Islands. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman accused the U.S. military on Wednesday of hyping up militarization and stirring up trouble, and warned that China will not be threatened by any military warships It goes on further to report that the Pentagon was reported to be considering sending warships to the Taiwan Strait and intensifying naval patrols in the South China Sea that would be longer in duration and involve larger number of ships, allowing the United States military to closely observe Chinese facilities in the area. The U.S. is also making efforts to rally its international allies, including the UK and France, to beef up their military presence, such as Navy patrols, to counter those of China. And finally, it reports that the Chinese Foreign Ministry stated, with the increasingly tense relations between the two countries, it's understandable that we make a little gesture of compromise. It's not wise for China to directly confront the United States. We shall decide later on possible redeployment after the tensions go down. It's better that we make 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, because both sides are still restrained and neither side wants to go to war. With that being said, the Telegraph is reporting that Taiwan has began conducting their war games, simulating repelling Chinese attack amid heightened tensions. Fighter jets, helicopters, and thousands of troops in Taiwan fought back a simulated Chinese invasion on Thursday as the self-ruled island faces increasing military and diplomatic pressure from Beijing. Live fire drills began Monday, with troops simulating surprise air and coastal assaults to reflect increased military threats from China. The Taiwan president watched Thursday's succession of ongoing hand glory exercise involving 41 soldiers attack helicopters from an airbase. Thursday's scenario simulated the enemy bombing of an airfield and a paratrooper attack with air and ground troops deployed to take back the base. The Taiwan president stated that I have seen our troops' capabilities, and I have faith that our troops can achieve the goal of solid defense and multiple deterrence. On the other hand, China held its own live fire drills in April in the Taiwan Strait, the narrow waterway separating the Chinese mainland from Taiwan, following weeks of air and naval maneuvers in the area. Beijing has also stepped up diplomatic pressure on Taiwan, luring 4 countries to switch allegiance from Taiwan to China. China has also warned about recent warming in relations between Taiwan and the United States, which remains the island's most powerful ally and arms suppliers, even though it has no official diplomatic ties. This is definitely wars and rumors of wars, as well as distress of nations. We are watching these prophecies come to pass, or right about to come to pass. And I will definitely continue to keep you updated as these reports continue to be developed, but please do leave your comments in the comments section. Tell me what you think. Also, come and visit us on Facebook, where we have these stories and many more, as well as our website at www.cww7news.org. All right, everybody, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. God bless.